Welcome to Integrative Preparedness. I'm Steve Smith. I want to talk a little bit today about why cops get their butts kicked and how that can apply to you and why understanding that, the reasons for it, in my opinion, might help you in the future. I was talking with a guy not long ago, an officer on the department of the city in which I live, about why they were down in their number of cops on the street. Now, this is a well-funded, affluent department in an affluent suburban city. They've got all the equipment you could imagine, all the bells and whistles. They've got all the technology, all the latest gear. They've got a mobile command center that you could probably go to the moon in. They've got stuff that the average citizen out here who's paying for it with their taxes has no idea they have, and would be very surprised if they realized what their technological capabilities were. But that's not where the problem is. The problem is the cop on the street. So he was talking about how they were down officers and they needed to get more guys on the street because the city's growing. And I asked him how many they were down. He told me, he said, but we've got a new academy class coming out here pretty soon, so I hope that we keep most of those. And that sounded kind of funny to me, and I asked him, well, why wouldn't you keep most of those? Because in my day, there was a few that didn't make it, through their street training phase, and some that got hurt for whatever reason. But the vast majority, they lasted. And I was kind of surprised when he told me that a majority left during their first year. And I asked him why, and he said, well, he says a lot of times it's because they get into a fight or into a scrap, or they find out the job just isn't what they thought it was going to be, and they end up leaving. And I found I couldn't understand that. I didn't understand that. In my day, and here I'm the old dog talking again, right? We Well, maybe I should insert this before I go back to my old dog story. I got to thinking about this, and I wondered what was it that was bringing these people into police service, and yet not being able to handle one of the basic things that any thinking person would understand as a part of that job. And I came to the conclusion that they were simply ill-equipped, unprepared, and had a minimal, a limited understanding of a very important part of that job, which was being able to handle things on the street, violent encounters. It brought back to mind a scene in a movie that some of us joke about, and I don't remember what the movie was. It's been years since I saw it. It was a Sylvester Stallone movie, I know that. He was a cop from present day, kind of a hardcore, city cop. That somehow, I think he was frozen or something. I don't know. Sent to the future to chase down this bad guy who had also been frozen. Anyway, so they send him there, and and he meets the cops of the future, and they're all terrified, I guess, of this criminal that got de-iced or thawed out from the past, and they're talking to Stallone, and I think one of them is Sandra Bullock. I'm not sure. Like most guys, I always liked her. Um, that's why I remember, but I could be wrong. But anyway, the phrase, the line in there was, "Well, we're police officers. We're not trained to deal with that level of violence," something like that. And it was just so ludicrous at the time that I heard it. We laughed, but man, it is coming like that. Um, the difference that I see, the reason that these young cops are getting their butts waxed out here is, like I say, they're ill-equipped mentally. They got all the equipment. I mean, they got stuff hanging off of them that they look like they're uh, you know some kind of SEAL team or Delta or something walking around. They got more stuff than they. We did it in pants, an old Sam Brown belt, and a 6-shooter, um, and our charming personalities. But they're well equipped, but they are not well equipped uh, mentally and emotionally. When I went on back in the 70s, people hated cops. They called us pigs. It was at the end of the Vietnam War. Society hated anybody in uniform, or whether it was military or police. The riots that burned down the country weren't that far, in the past. And so people who went into the police service, most of us, we came off the streets. We were bang around guys. We were street smart guys. And although I know there were some that went on for the wrong reasons, either they just needed a job, which I'm not saying is the wrong reason, or they wanted to have authority over others, which is the wrong reason. Most of us came off because we had this idea that we should go out there and do some good, and we were raised on the Lone Ranger and John Wayne movies, and standing up against evil, and putting the bad guys in jail, and saving the damsel, and doing what's right. Things have changed, and so when we went on the streets, we were pretty much, we knew what we were getting into, and we went into it with full expectations. Nowadays, it's a little bit different. Law enforcement is seen as a career. That's good that it is, but it's seen as a career that's not all that much different than other careers. The kids are coming out of colleges. They're coming out having studied police science or administration of justice. They're well educated in things that have nothing to do with their street job when it gets down to brass tacks. And so they come out here and they're very ill prepared. When I went through the academy, our PT and self-defense, hand-to-hand combat, was 2 hours a day for 6 months. I think I mentioned in a previous video that when I used to publish Grandmaster Martial Arts magazine, I thought it might be interesting to go out and cover the current defensive tactics training for the local police academy. And when I went out there, I found that the totality of that training was the afternoon of the final day of the academy. That's it. And of course, everybody showed up after coming back late from lunch, and they knew that they'd already passed the academy. They couldn't care less, and they showed them a couple of foolish Brazilian jiu-jitsu moves that would never work on the street, and that was the end of it. And when you combine that with the fact that these kids are coming out without having banged around, they live a much more peaceful life than we did. They didn't come off the streets, as it were. They have no personal experience in violent encounters with other people. And so when they are confronted with this, it's a shock to them. And they can't handle it. And I've watched a number of things on some videos and things about cops getting their butts handed to them, and you can see it. They're not ready for it. They're ill prepared. They don't see it coming. They don't have abilities to respond with force unless it's with a gun or a taser. And I'm going to get into a couple of other videos here also. One is the importance of disproportional response, and another is what's with all these police shootings. But I wanted to do this one first so that you wouldn't think I was just some bloodthirsty barbarian out there when I come around with these other videos. The problem is that not having experience in violent encounters, when it comes about, it's a shock. And either they get their butt whipped or they respond inappropriately and end up killing people. We had a young guy out here in this city about a year ago who had some mental problems, and his family went to dinner, and the kid went on Facebook or whatever it was. It may have been Twitter. I hear that Facebook is for old people, but whatever he went on social media and started making some statements to the fact that he wanted to kill himself. His friends picked it up, called his parents. his parents, who were away at dinner, called the police to go over and do a check on him at the house. The police went over there, and when the parents got back, they advised his parents that he was dead. And they didn't tell the parents how he had died until the next day. And I'm not going to get into the particulars on this one, but he died because a cop went out there and shot him 13 times. That was inexcusable, and I will explain that in a future one. That's the problem with too many. Now this is not the case. This is not the case in the cities. City cops deal with violence on a daily basis. They're comfortable with it. They handle it very well. You get out into the sheriff's departments and some of the smaller towns, those guys also, they're used to having to do things by themselves. You know, they don't have as often, as frequent of violent encounters as you do in the city. But when you've got them, you have to handle it pretty much by yourself. And so I don't see the same problems usually in the cities, or in the inner cities, or in the counties, the outlying counties, where I see it is in the suburbs, where these people are coming into the job for whatever reason. Too many of them, to be honest, are coming in, I think, because they just want authority over people. They've never had authority over people. They think that this is a way to make people listen to them and be important, and that is the last reason you want anybody to have a badge and a gun. And then they think that it's held up now to be a profession of respect, and they want to be respected, but they forget that violence is still a part of the job, and they're not up to it. The reason that I talked about this is that our suburban cops, too many, and there are some good ones. I don't mean to paint them all with the same brush. There are some good ones, and I know some good ones who are very capable and would do well in whatever environment they're in. But too many of them out here are not. And what I would suggest that implies for the average person, the average prepper, is that when a violent encounter arises, most people are ill-equipped mentally to deal with it, unprepared to deal with it, and that is both a mental situation and a physical. You don't have the physical capabilities, whether that's in hand-to-hand, or whether that's fighting with some other things, or whether that's with a gun or whatever. People just aren't tuned to that, and so they're not ready, and so they're either going to respond inadequately, or respond in a disproportionate manner that is inappropriate. And I'm going to talk about appropriate, disproportionate responses in another video. But so my point in all this is that it's important to realize that when everything does collapse, the world is going to be a violent place that most people do not have the mental and emotional background to understand. And I'm not going to say that I can prepare anybody for that, because I can't. And really, without dealing with reality, you can't either. But understanding that that's what's going to happen, and trying to attune yourself as much as possible to the understanding. I'm also going to do another one on the traits of deadly men, because this comes into it as well. To be able to understand and accept the potential violence in the world, and that it can arise at any moment, and it usually does. Try to prepare yourself so that you're able to respond to that, recognize it, and then respond to it in a fairly seamless manner. And in whatever way you can find that you can do that, I would say that it's probably one of the most important. elements of your preparedness you can work on. So, you even watch some of these. Go on YouTube and watch some of these. I haven't watched a lot, but I know there are a lot of them because I hear guys laughing about them all the time. But I hear there are a lot of videos on cops, getting in fights. Watch them. Watch how it happens. Watch how it develops. Watch the clues that they missed, and watch, what made them unable to handle the situation effectively, and see how you can kind of tune yourself up so that if ever happens to you, you'll be able to respond a little bit better. So anyway, leave it at that. And that fits right in with what we say about prepare well today. That means tuning yourself up physically, mentally, and emotionally to deal with violence when it comes about in order to live well tomorrow. And that means keep on living and hopefully not be broken up and maimed. Okay. So that was a happy video, wasn't it? Right, you all have a good day, and get out there and do something to prepare. And I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.